Okay, so in this part, what we're going to do is we are going to find the function value. So find each function value. And how we're going to do that is we're going to use our strategy of what we did last chapter, find our degree, and then and use our special right triangle, so our reference angles. Okay, so the first problem we are going to find and tackle is 2 pi over 3. Okay, so again, we don't want to plug this into our calculators because we want an exact answer. And what that means is no decimals. That's what that means. Okay, so let's go for it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to convert my radians to degrees. Okay, so what I'm going to notice is my pi and the pi will cancel each other out. The 3 will go into 180 60 times. And then we're just going to say 2 times 60, which gives us 120. So tangent of 2 pi over 3 is the same thing as saying tangent of 120 degrees. They are both equivalent to each other. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to set up my right triangle. So I know that 120 is in my second quadrant, 120. I want to find my reference angle, so 180 minus 120. That is going to be the same as 60 degrees. So I can either set up my triangle on here, or I can set it up off to the side. So 60, that means that'll be 30. So I'm going to say that's 1, that's 2, which means that is root 3. Now, I'm in this quadrant, so again, if I'm creating this right angle right here, here is where my 60 degrees is going to be. So notice that my x would be negative, so technically there'll be a negative right there. So tangent is opposite over adjacent, so that means I'm going to take root 3 over negative 1. So I'm going to cancel away the denominator of a negative 1, just move that root 3. So I'm going to say my answer is 2 pi over 3 is equal to a negative root 3. So that is how we're going to solve that. All right, let's try another one. Okay. Oh, how about this one? The sine of pi. All right. So pi, we already know, if we remember back to our first video, we said 360 was equal to 2 pi, so that means 180 degrees was equal to pi. So this is equivalent to the sine of 180. Okay, create my graph. I know 180 is on that coordinate. Again, it doesn't really matter what points you pick. I'm going to pick negative 4, 0. Sine is made up of my y over my r. So I know I'm going to have a 0 over a number, which happens to be 4. So I know it's going to be 0. So that means the sine of pi is just 0, just like the sine of 180 is also 0. These are going to be numbers that you guys will eventually memorize, sines and the cosines. All right, let's try cosine. Speaking of cosine, so next example, let's say cosine of, okay, how about this one? Cosine of 2 pi over 3, right? So notice that it's very similar to my tangent of 2 pi over 3, so I already have this triangle made up for this guy. So that means this is already equivalent to the cosine of 120 degrees. So, using this, I know that cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so negative 1 over 2. So that means the cosine of 2 pi over 3 is equal to negative 1 over 2. Now, all of these problems, what we can do is we can double check in our calculator. I just have to make sure that I'm on the correct mode. So notice that I'm in radian mode this time. So if I say cosine of 2 pi, and I'll divide that by 3, close that, notice I get the negative 0.5, right? Hopefully you do recognize it, the negative 0.5. If I do the tangent of the same thing, so 2 pi divided by 3, I'm going to get a decimal, right? And so negative 1.73. So it's a little bit more. It's a little less than the radical of 4, right? Because it's the radical of 3. Oh, forgot the negative in front, so let's insert that negative. And notice that negative root 3 is negative 1.73. So again, we can use our calculator to double check that we are correct. All right, let's try one more. This time, let's try the secant of negative 4 pi over 3, right? Secant of a negative 4 pi over 3. So notice that I have negatives, so when I graph this, I'm going to be going clockwise. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to convert this 180 over pi. Notice again I used a 3. Didn't mean that on purpose, but chances are the reference angle will be 60 degrees, so we'll start to notice things like that. So pi and pi cancels out. I know that that will give me 60, so this will give me a negative 240. I think that would be same quadrant, second quadrant, boom, all the way here. It's 240. Now, 360 minus 240 is the same as 120. Okay, so it's very similar to exactly the same problem that we did earlier. So this is equivalent to the secant of 120. And the secant of 120, we already have our triangle made. Again, here we go. Now the secant is the reciprocal of the 120. So we actually already found the 120, so we just have to flip that guy. So that means that this answer is going to be equal to negative 2. Okay, so a couple different ones that we can use. Okay, and that is finding our exact form using radians instead of degrees.